Good evening all and welcome to this Caerphilly Council Joint Scrutiny Committee meeting held on Monday the 24th of January 2022 via Microsoft Teams. This meeting will be recorded and made available to view via our Council's website, except for discussions involving confidential or exempt items. Therefore, the images, audio of those individuals speaking will be published or will be available to all via the recording on our Council's website at caerphilly.gov.uk. So turning to our agenda for our meeting, item 1 is to receive apologies for absence and a roll call of members present. Do we have any apologies, please, colleagues?
Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Bishop, Councillor Ellsbury, Councillor Stone and Councillor Thomas. I'm not aware of any others.
Thank you, Kath. Does anyone else know of any apologies, please? Nope. Okay. Kath, could you take a roll call of people who are present, please?
Yes, Chair. Members, when I call your name, I take the scrutiny members first. You can just confirm you're present. Councillor Adams.
Present.
Councillor Aldworth.
Present.
Councillor Andrews.
Present.
Councillor Angel.
Present.
I can't see Councillor John Bevan or Councillor Phil Bevan on the call. Councillor Bazina.
Present.
Councillor Collis.
Present.
Councillor Cushing.
Present.
Councillor Cass.
Present.
Councillor David.
Present.
I can't see Councillor Tudor Davis. Councillor Etheridge.
Present.
Councillor Mark Evans.
Present.
Councillor Farina Childs.
Good.
Councillor Gow. Present. Councillor Goff.
Present.
I can't see Councillor Hardacre. No. Councillor Harding.
Present.
I can't see Haas, Harvard or Higgs. Councillor Hussey.
Councillor Harvard is present.
Oh, sorry, Derek, I couldn't see you there. Thank you.
Yeah, present, Kath.
Thank you. Can't see Councillor James. Councillor Jeremiah. Councillor Johnston.
Present.
Kath,
Present.
Kath, Councillor Vince James is here.
Okay. Yes, I was just going to call you, sorry. I can't see Councillor Jones. Can't see Councillor Kent. Councillor Kirby.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here. Kath. Steve.
Okay. Thank you.
Kath, can I interrupt you a moment? Councillor Elaine Forehead wants to speak, please.
Oh, sorry. I think a lot of the names have disappeared off my sidebars. I was
Righto. Councillor Forehead, please. No? Sorry, please go on, Kath.
okay. Councillor Ariana Leonard. Councillor Philippa Leonard.
Present. Present.
Councillor, thank you. Councillor Mann.
And
Thank you.
Kath, Phil Bevan's computer is in dock apparently, so he can't
Okay.
be present. But an
Okay.
apology from that.
Councillor Miles.
Present.
Councillor Shaw, thank you. Councillor Shaw Morgan.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver. Can't see you on the call. Councillor Owen. No. Councillor Parry.
Present.
Councillor Priest. No. Councillor Price. No. Councillor John Roberts.
Emma, Kath, yeah.
Councillor Ridgewell.
Present, Kath.
Councillor Sorales.
Present, Kath.
Councillor Sargent. Councillor Scriven. Councillor Skivens. Councillor Graham Simmons. Councillor Julian Simmons.
Present.
Councillor Stone, we have apologies. Councillor John Taylor.
Present.
Councillor Whittle. Councillor Whittle.
put the thing on. Sorry, I'm here.
Councillor Tom Williams? No, I think he was here earlier, but he dropped out, I think. Councillor Walter Williams?
Present. Tom Williams is on screen, Kath.
Tom.
Kath.
Okay, I'll mark him as present then.
Yeah.
And earlier you said that Denver wasn't present, but I can see Denver on the screen, Kath.
Okay, I'll mark him as present then. And Councillor Zablatinsky?
Present, Kath.
Thank you. I'll go through the cabinet members. Thank
Sorry,
you.
go on.
Cabinet members present. Councillor Cook?
Present.
Councillor George?
Present.
Councillor Gordon?
Present.
Councillor Marsden?
Present.
Councillor James Pritchard?
Present, Kath. I'm showing as a guest, but I am present. Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Stenner?
Present.
Councillor Whiting?
Present.
Councillor Whitcomb?
Present, Kath.
We have some co-opted members who have been invited. I'll just check if they're available. Martin Weston? Tracy Millington? Brewin James? Cyril Luke? Pat Cook? Delwyn Davis? No, none of them are present. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for doing that, Kath. I appreciate that. Councillor Phipps wants to come in, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't think you called my name, Kath, but I am present.
Thank you for confirming that, Councillor Phipps. On to item 2 on our agenda, which is declarations of interest. Councillors and officers are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal and or prejudicial interest in respect of any item of business on this agenda, in accordance with Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution, and the Code of Conduct for both councillors and officers. Are there any declarations of interest, please? There's no hands showing. Silence. Okay, thank you very much for that. Item 3 of our agenda is to approve the minutes of the Joint Scrutiny Committee meeting held on 21st of October 2021, pages 1 to 8 of our pack. If I go through the pages one by one, please call out if you have any corrections. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Okay. Could members who attended that meeting please move and second the minutes as a true record? Do we have a mover, please?
Move the minutes, Chair.
A second, Chair.
So that's Councillor Williams to second. Who moved, please?
Councillor Ridgewell, Jez.
Thank you, Councillor Ridgewell. And now for those who did attend that meeting, could we please vote on those minutes? Do we have the form coming up, please? Thank you. For those members who have problems voting on the form or who are phoning in, please give your view verbally. Thank you.
Councillor Pritchard, Chair, in favour.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard.
Hi, Councillor Kirby. It's Philippa here, Philippa Leonard. I'm abstaining because I wasn't present at the meeting. And
Yep,
is that okay?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Leonard.
Thank you.
Chair, Councillor John Taylor here. I've abstained because I was not present at that last meeting either.
Thank you for letting us know.
And Councillor Tudor Davis, I wasn't at the last meeting. I abstained also.
Thank you.
Me too, Councillor Kirby. Carol Andrews. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Sorry, say that again, please.
Councillor Priest,
Okay, thank you for that.
Chair, those minutes to move now. The minutes are moved, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Can people turn their microphones off, please? There's some background noise. Thank you. On to agenda item 4 then, colleagues. Draft budget proposals for 2022-23. I call on Cabinet Member Councillor Leonard Stenner to introduce this report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Before us this evening is the draft budget proposals for the 2022-23 financial year, which were considered by Cabinet on the 19th of January. I am pleased to report that the provisional settlement shows an overall increase of 9.4% in core funding for local authorities on an all Wales basis. The level of increase for individual local authorities is determined by changes in the data sets that drive the funding formula, and for Caerphilly this results in a cash uplift of 8.5% for 2022-23, which equates to £25.1 million. Along with a proposed increase in council tax of 2.5%, this means there will be no requirement for any new savings to be identified to balance the budget for 2022-23. The significant increase in the provisional financial settlement for 2022-23 is very welcome during these challenging times, but circa £17.3 million of this increase will be needed to fund inescapable inflationary pressures. However, based on a council tax increase of 2.5%, there will be a circa £10 million available for investment in key service areas as this authority recovers from the pandemic. The key areas investment in our services are £6.2 million for social services to meet the commitment to pay the real living wage for care workers, address increases in demand in both adult and children's services, and to provide funding to assist with additional costs that may continue to arise as a consequence of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. The draft budget proposals will ensure that budgets are protected for our schools. £250,000 has been identified to support a new apprenticeship scheme across the council. Significant investment is also proposed in public protection services to increase capacity in key teams such as trading standards, enforcement and environmental health. There will also be additional investment in a community safety warden service, the flood prevention team, and in the business enterprise and renewal team to lever in external funding and to promote the development of our town centres. The draft budget proposals includes a proposed increase of 2.5% in council tax for the 2022-23 financial year. This is well below inflation and is the lowest increase for a number of years. This will increase the Caerphilly County Borough's Band D precept from £1,230.57 to £1,261.33. That is an annual increase of £30.76 or a weekly increase of 59p. Members will be aware that Welsh Government has provided substantial grant funding to local authorities in both 2021 and 21-22 through the COVID-19 Hardship Fund. This was to help authorities with additional costs and income losses linked to the pandemic. The Hardship Fund will end on the 31st of March 2022, and local authorities will be required to meet ongoing pressures linked to the pandemic from the funding provided in the provisional financial statement. Due to the ongoing financial uncertainty linked to the pandemic, it is proposed to top up the Council's COVID-19 earmarked reserve to £5 million by transferring uncommitted balances on other previously approved reserves. As we exit the pandemic, the financial challenges that face local authorities are unknown, and we must ensure that Caerphilly is well placed to deal with these challenges as they arise. The report includes details of an updated mid-term financial plan that shows a potential savings requirement of £9.753 million for the two-year period 2023-24 to 2024-25. Detailed work will be undertaken in the coming months to further refine the mid-term financial plan and the Council's transformation programme, and associated corporate reviews will be key components in addressing the projected financial gap. Members are asked to consider and comment on these draft budget proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stenner. I'm sure that you and our Head of Corporate Finance, Steve Harris, will be happy to respond to members' queries or comments. And on that, we'll open up to discussion from members, please. So who'd like to speak on the proposals? Councillor Donna Cushing first, please.
Thanks, Chair. I've actually got a number of questions I'd like to ask, but my first question is, can we have the balances in the reserves, please? And what are the reserves earmarked for?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cushing. Who'd like to respond to that, please?
Steve Harris.
Steve, please.
Yeah, I can see Steve there.
Yeah. Hi, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There will be a report presented to Policy and Resources Scrutiny Committee later in February. It's an annual report that we do on reserves, and it sets out the details of all the balances that are currently earmarked and gives the reasons why those reserves are being held. It's quite a detailed report, but if members look out for that, it will be available around the middle of February.
Thank you, Steve. Back to Councillor Cushing, please.
Right, thanks for that, Steve. However, this report detailed regarding about budget outlay, I think might be presumptuous until it's actually presented regarding the reserves, because I have queries on the reserves and where it can be incorporated into the budget. So I think this draft budget is very presumptuous of us at this present time.
Thank you, Councillor Cushing. Was there anything else you wanted to raise?
Oh, yes, I do.
Please proceed.
Actually.
Could I come back on that, Chair?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, let's
Steve, just come back on that point.
Councillor Cushing.
The top-up of the COVID reserve is actually utilising balances which we've identified as uncommitted in other areas. So, you know, we have reviewed the reserves. We've identified that there's around 2.5 million that is uncommitted presently, and that's why we're recommending in the budget report that that is used to top up the COVID reserve. As I said, the report that comes in February will set out the reasons why other reserves are being held by the council.
Well, I have a number of other questions actually on the budget, so draft budget. So if you bear with me, because I'm using a single screen, I need to scroll down on the actual questions I've got. 5.1.1. The local government financial statement from Welsh Government, you say there that the consistency of the revenue support grant and redistributed non-domestic rates. Now, I understand there's been a settlement under this, but they are supposed to be redistributed on non-domestic rates. So can I have clarity on that, please?
Steve, please.
Yeah, as it says, there's two elements to the financial settlement. The one is the revenue support grant, which is the bulk of it. The balance then comes from business rates or non-domestic rates. They're collected by all local authorities in Wales and they are pooled by the Welsh Government. And then they are redistributed to local authorities based on an agreed formula. That is not subject to change for next year. So there will be no change in the way that's done. There has been discussions in England about changing the formula and allowing different authorities to retain some of the rates they collect, but that's not currently the position in Wales.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, Donna.
Right. Do you want me to continue? Because I do actually have a number of questions, and I don't know if somebody else wants to come in, but I do have a number of questions.
That's kind of you. Donna, should I take a couple of other speakers and perhaps call you back in? Please show, and I'll call you back in if that's okay. Would that be all right?
No problem.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'll leave my hand up though for now.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Councillor Miles, next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just say I'm so pleased to see that there aren't going to be any cuts needed this year. So I'm happy with the report that's been presented, but could I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Which is, how many households would benefit from the council tax reduction scheme?
Thank you. Do we have an answer, please?
I can come in on that, Chair.
Yes,
in fact, that this was raised in Cabinet last week. So at the moment, there's 16,300 households benefit from the council tax reduction scheme, and it's just over 20% of those households that receive 100% reduction.
That's helpful. Thank you, Councillor Stenner. Councillor Miles, are you happy with that?
I am, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Kevin Etheridge, please.
Thank you, Councillor Kirby. A number of points, please. I firstly like to welcome the community safety input of the wardens. I think that is long overdue, and I welcome that. My second point is, if you actually look at the report, and I'm going to make some general points, there are a number of officers which are going to be employed, and there's a whole list in the report, from additional grade 7 right down to capacity of other officers. What I'd like to concentrate on, and please forgive me if I do make a mistake here. If we look at the corporate services, there's a senior relationship manager post here, which looks to engage with the members. And that's looking at costing £85,000. Now, I'd like to ask for the job description and what members have asked for this post. And also, the second point is 88,000 for, I think, a freedom of information request officer. We've had problems with FOIs for 4 years. But the problem is, as I said, some of these officers are needed, like environmental health, but there's a whole list, Chair, of these officers. So I'd like comments on that. And the third point is, a number of residents have got confused because they read the report and they think that the 2.5% is set in stone. And I said, no, there is a consultation which is going at the moment. So perhaps Councillor Stenner could confirm for me if she does, if there are a large number of consultations asking that the council tax be reduced. I understand Bridgend and Neath Port Talbot may be going for a nil increase. I would like to ask the cabinet member to confirm that they would look at a lower increase than 2.5%. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Etheridge. We'll go to Councillor Stenner and then to Richard Edmonds, please, to respond to your other questions, Councillor Etheridge. Councillor Stenner first, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Obviously, I haven't seen all of the responses from the consultation yet, and neither have my cabinet colleagues. When we look at those consultation responses, we will see how people have responded. We will certainly take on board what the residents are telling us, but bearing in mind this is a draft budget proposal. If we deviate from that 2.5%, then savings will have to be found elsewhere. So, but it is something that we will certainly look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Stenner. Ed, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. Just to cover those 2 points off, Councillor Etheridge, a bit of clarification to begin with. Although the budget report states a cost of 85k, that isn't actually the salary for that post. That's the salary plus the on costs. So that particular role, at the moment, we are pitching it at a Hay Band C, which is between 54 and 59k. Obviously, when you add in national insurance and pension on top of that, it does create a higher amount. So it's perhaps not as senior a role as it looks on the surface. In terms of the job description, at the minute we're pitching this at that level. Obviously, the job description has got to be evaluated. It's possible that cost may come down. We'll want to work with members over the weeks or so that lie ahead before we get this job out there to make sure it hits the spot. But I think you will appreciate more than most that over recent months, we've had a number of representations made to us by councillors, yourself included, Councillor Etheridge, where perhaps attempts to engage the organisation haven't gone as well as you would have liked. We recognise that's a challenge. We recognise that staff are working very, very hard at the moment. So this is a proposal really to bring additional resource into a space that we think will be very beneficial to you as members. And as soon as we have that job description in place and we can confirm a salary, obviously we'll report back. It certainly won't be any higher than the level that it's reported at within the draft proposals before you. In terms of the freedom of information request, again, it's good that you're asking this question, because I think you'd accept that you've made a number of representations over recent months about our inability to hit our targets on freedom of information. Again, for clarity, although there's a reference in the report to 88k, that's actually for 2 freedom of information officers. So we're putting some boots on the ground in that team. But those officers will also be looking to automate and improve the existing arrangements so that not only do we hit our targets, but we smash them out of the park. So again, those 88k, if you cut that in 2 for the 2 officers, that doesn't mean they're on 44k each. That's inclusive of on costs again. So that those officers, I think, we'll be looking to put in at around grade 8, which is equivalent to the other officers in that team at present. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ed. On to Councillor Derek Havard next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry about the delay. I just want to comment, actually, and say how pleased I am that the education budget is protected. You know, that's so vital to us. And also, in addition, that you put an extra money into the apprenticeship scheme. I just want to say how pleased I am. Thank you.
That's a good point. Thank you for that, Councillor Havard. I know that Leanne Dallimore from Unison is with us this evening. Leanne, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, members, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you tonight. As the largest trade union in Caerphilly Council, we felt it was important to come here tonight to put forward our support for the budget proposals for 22-23. Overall, the report is a very positive one, and the financial settlement is certainly better than we expected to be. But I think we must not forget that this has come on the back of nearly 12 years of austerity and devastating cuts to local government across Wales and also to the UK. So while we can breathe a little easier this year, there is much ground to be made up, and we are very conscious of that. It is a positive to read in the budget proposals that the real living wage of £9.90 per hour from April 2022 will be introduced across the whole care sector, and this is welcomed and certainly overdue. But unfortunately, it is not going to fix the cost of living catastrophe that actually awaits us. The soaring cost of living means growing anxiety for low-income families, and many of our members and employees who are able to switch jobs will be intensifying as the predictions in the new year in searches for better paid work. So this is terrible news basically for our public services, and unless employers, wages do rise, soaring inflation, including mounting energy costs, will hit our public sector workers hard and should be something that we are bearing in mind. Which brings me really on to those who are working from home specifically. And while there are lots of benefits to home working, the cost of working from home in terms of increased lighting, heating, and a general increase in energy costs cannot be overlooked. And I would ask that Caerphilly Council, as part of its budget proposals, look at offering a home working allowance to these staff, in addition to the HMRC allowance available, in order to try to cover some of these increased costs. We are clear as a trade union that work should not come at the cost of the employee, and with the majority of our staff earning less than £25,000 a year, Caerphilly Unison asks that this be considered as part of the budget proposals. If we are serious about maintaining an agile workforce, then we must also get serious about addressing the costs that this brings. And unfortunately, at this moment in time, and for the past 2 years, this burden has fallen onto the shoulders of our employees, many of whom can least afford it, and many of whom are starting to struggle. I would like to put on record our appreciation for the work that's been undertaken by Stephen Harris and his staff, and to each of the heads of service in preparing this report, because it is certainly no small undertaking. But I would like to ask that in future years the trade unions are consulted slightly earlier in the process. While we have been assured of a trade union consultation meeting, sight of the proposals before being in the public domain would be appreciated. However, that said, we certainly support and welcome the budget that is set out here tonight. So thank you for listening, members, and thank you again, Chair, for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much for your input, Leanne. I'm sure all your remarks have been noted by people at the meeting tonight, and we do appreciate your input. Thank you very much, Leanne. The next speaker I've got showing is Councillor Sean Morgan, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. I would like to say it's lovely to see the Chief Executive back. First time I've been in the meeting, and it's good to see you back, Christina. It's quite a pleasure actually to read this budget after the years of, as Leanne just pointed out, 12 years of austerity, hundreds of millions of pounds being cut out of the budget in real terms. So it really is a pleasure to read this budget. So seeing the investment right across the spectrum, really, investment in social services who've been key to helping people out during the pandemic, investment in the apprenticeship scheme. So we're looking forward, we're looking at the future, and you know, the investment going into our business and enterprise and renewal team who've done such a fantastic job of working with businesses during the pandemic. So we've got a proposal for a 2.5% rise. Obviously, with inflation running at 5.1%, that is still a sort of a real terms cut of about, you know, it's a 2.5% cut really in real terms. But you know, times are difficult. Inflation running riot, as I just said. You know, we got to do as much as we can to protect the budgets of our residents. I believe in last year's figures. So my first question is, I believe in last year's figures that for Band D properties, we are one of the cheapest. I think we're the second cheapest in Wales, and if somebody could answer this, we're about £550 per year cheaper than Blaenau Gwent, and £500 or £510 cheaper than Merthyr Tydfil on the Band D. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, Sean. Yeah, that is correct.
Okay. Thanks, Leonard. The one thing I would like to ask, under 5.2, 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3, as I said earlier, there's a welcome 6 million, or it's more than £6 million coming in for social services. I'm just wondering why it mentions at 2.23 that this money is going to be held corporately rather than being directly given to put into social services, which is what we are here to, you know, which is what the budget is proposing. So what's the reason for holding it in the corporately, as I said, rather than the money going directly to social services?
Steve?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The main reason for that is that we need to do the work around the real living wage and passporting that funding through to independent sector providers. That's going to be a detailed piece of work. There's a large number of providers that we're going to need to work with on an open book basis. That will take some time, but once that piece of work is completed and we have an evidence base to pass that funding on, we will then release that funding from the corporate centre into the social services budget. The other reason as well is that there are underlying increases in demand within social care in both adult services and children's services. Some of that will be because of the pandemic, but other elements will of course just be natural increases in demand that we've experienced in recent years. So again, we want to understand what that looks like as we move into the new financial year. And again, once we have a much better understanding of the financial impact of that, at that point, we'll then release the funding into the social services budget.
Thank you, Steve. Let's go over to Dave Street for further input, please.
Sorry, yeah. Okay.
You're on mute at the moment, Steve. Dave, sorry. Thank you.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
That's okay. Sorry, I've had little trouble getting the mute button off. No, as Steve's suggested, the issue around the real living wage is particularly complex. We have had some initial guidance off government. There has been a formula, the guidance that Welsh Government have used in establishing how much should come to each authority. But it is a very, very complex equation. You'll know providers relied on local authorities a great deal during the pandemic. We used the hardship fund for that. The hardship fund finishes on the 31st of March, so we anticipate that some of those costs that we were able to meet from that fund are probably going to have to come from this settlement. And whereas perhaps the payment of the real living wage looks a relatively straightforward equation, it's anything but. There are issues there around differential for managers. There's things like employers' NI costs, employers' superannuation costs. So as Steve has said, people in social services are working with people in finance very, very closely at the moment to understand those costs. And really, when we have got that where we need to be, then we'll be calling the funding down from the corporate balances into the social services core budget.
That's helpful. Thank you, Dave. Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, just to say that if there is an underspend on that, then there'll be a further report as to where that money would go at that point. It wouldn't just disappear into corporate services. We would be made aware of where it was going.
Dave or Steve? Steve, please.
Yeah, I'll come back and actually, assuming the draft budget proposals are agreed, that funding will be in the base budget. If there is any funding available, once we've completed the exercise with the real living wage, etc., then yes, it would be available then for investment in other service areas. The report mentions that we will be bringing another report through to Cabinet at the mid-year point around the MTFP. Clearly, we can give an update at that point as well in terms of where we are, following the negotiations with the independent sector providers, etc.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Morgan?
No, that's okay. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. On to Deputy Leader, Councillor Jamie Pritchard, please.
Well, thank you, Chair. And can I firstly thank all members, including members of staff who have been in touch with me over recent days following the death of my mother. I do appreciate it greatly, and it means a lot to me, in obviously a very difficult period. So can I thank you once all again? I'd like to also thank Leanne from Unison for offering a general support to the budget. I just suppose a few points from me, really. Number of years ago, we were having very, very difficult settlements in which there was proposals of council tax increases, well above 5%. And also cuts to services. Now, I don't think any councillor around this table wants to, be voting on increasing charges or council tax above inflation. But Caerphilly wasn't alone in that. That was happening across the board in Wales. But what we've had for the last 2 years, and obviously this is a draft proposal subject to potential change along the way, as the cabinet member has responded to a question, is that we've got a no cuts proposed budget. That's obviously very important. We don't want to be introducing any cuts, but also there's growth included in these proposals. Certainly within my portfolio, flood prevention, obviously that's to be welcomed. Apprenticeship schemes, and but social care, £6 million of additional investment, incredibly important. Now I understand, when councillors make arguments about reducing council tax. But what I would say is, I think in balancing everything up, as the cabinet member has already said, for every percentage of council tax you reduce by, that's about £600,000 of potential cuts, of cuts to services you're going to have to make. So I think on the proposed budget in front of us, this is certainly something that I strongly welcome. But I just want to make the final point that I know it's incumbent on every member to scrutinise the budget as we're doing today, because that's better governments come from closer scrutiny. But that's what we're doing. But I'll just leave it there, Chair, in welcoming the draft budget proposals, and just to say when this goes forward for final recommendations next month, I don't think there's any member who's going to be taking this lightly about any proposed changes we make. But thank you for the opportunity, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. Next is Leader, Councillor Philippa Marsden, please.
Thank you ever so much, Chair. And sorry, I'm having problems now. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Absolutely. I just want to thank Leanne for her comments around the budget. I think, it is a positive budget, and, as many of the members have already alluded to, it is a fantastic budget. A budget like we've not seen for many years has already been indicated, with investment in key roles that will see us running a very efficient service indeed. So I just wanted to make a comment really in relation to the agile working element. As you know, that's something that is a piece of work that we're undertaking at the moment. And, through the staff survey, we've, many things have come to the fore. So I just want to put on record, really, my reassurance around that very much that, no one should suffer a detriment from working from home, and that is not the intention. So it's important, and, and I have already previously said that we'll sit down with the trade union, CMT, and the 151 officer in the fullness of time to bottom out the concerns of members of staff that may be feeling that they're under pressure financially as a result of working from home. But it's absolutely something that everyone is recognising that there indeed is a cost of living crisis and an energy crisis out there, and and is set to get worse, as we're all fully aware. So I just wanted to sort of put on record really my reassurance around that conversation, that we all come to the table and we have that debate around that, for reassurance purposes. So really, I just wanted to cover off the concerns there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Leader. Next is Councillor Mike Davis, please.
Thank you, Chair. What I'd like to have an answer to, please, is it's mentioned in 522. 235K on 12 target flood prevention. Is it possible that somebody, I don't know if Councillor Pritchard could do that, put some meat on the bones as to what that expenditure is likely to be? Because I am aware that most of us within our wards have had some sort of flooding, and I know that we are way behind with getting culvert works done or whatever, especially in the ward that I represent. So if somebody could just put some meat on the bones there for me, please.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. I'll go to Councillor Pritchard and then to Marcus Williams, please. Councillor Pritchard first.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Davis, for that question. I can see that Mark Williams is indicated, so I'll just make a general point that it's about resources. We need additional capacity within the department, but I won't say anything further on now because I know Mark is going to come in. But it's all right if I hand over to Mark, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. Marcus Williams, please.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Davis, as Councillor Pritchard said, this is essentially for staff resources. Our drainage team is under-resourced, as we've seen over the last couple of years. Our changing climate does present many more challenges in terms of flooding and flood prevention. So this is to bolster resources in the Sustainable Urban Drainage team of engineering. Obviously, any culvert works would be capital expenditure, not revenue. So, which is different. But with the resources in place, then it will enable us to push more schemes forward.
And thanks for that. That seems to be good news if we are bolstering up the staff resources. That's great. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. No other hands are showing, so I'm going to go back now to Councillor Donna Cushy, who has more questions, I think.
Yeah, that's correct, Chair. Thanks for that. Yeah, I'd like to go on to 5.2.6, where it says the pay award for staff for 21-22 hasn't been finalised, and the final offer was of 1.75. Bearing in mind what Leanne Dallamore said, I'm quite surprised that this hasn't actually been finalised yet. Because this money was awarded back last year. So Really, I'm quite shocked that the staff haven't actually received that 1.75 percentage. And I don't know if I'm misremembering, but wasn't something said in the midterm financial report about that they were supposed to be more than this 1.75%? I think Jamie mentioned it in one meeting. I can't really recall now. So can I have clarity on that one first, please?
We'll go to Steve Harris and then to the leader, please. Steve, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, the pay award hasn't yet been agreed. 1.75% is the employer's final offer. But don't forget, this isn't a local issue for Caerphilly. This is a national issue. In terms of what was in the original 21-22 budget, you may recall that the Chancellor did announce a pay freeze for the public sector. But in spite of that, we did build 1% into the budget for 21-22, and you as a council agreed that last year. We also set aside the extra 0.75% as part of the outturn report that was presented to council in July. And moving forward, we have assumed a further pay increase of 3% from April next year. But again, until that's negotiated and agreed, the full budgetary impact won't be known until that is done. But we have allowed for the 1.75% and a further 3% in these draft budget proposals.
Thank you, Steve. Leader, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, absolutely. It is a national issue, as you probably will be aware, Councillor Cushing. And I represent the WLGA as spokesperson on employment matters. So I'm actually part of that negotiating body, and the decision has not been made. The trade unions are out to ballot on this. So hence the decision has not been made. So it will come very late in the day, and this is possibly the latest it has ever been. So this is quite an unusual position to be in, because obviously come May, we will start the next round of pay talks as well. So they were going to be running into one another like you've never seen before. So I just wanted to put that on record, that it's out, the meetings are will be forthcoming probably from about mid-February onwards.
Thank you, Leader.
This will all be backdated, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Next question then is national insurance increase of 1.5%. We've set a budget aside of 1.058 million. Can I, for the teaching staff, can I have clarity on that? Is that a staff the percentage rise, isn't that what the staff are supposed to pay, or people are supposed to pay up to their wages, not actually the council, or is that an additional cost?
Steve.
Yeah, I can clarify that. That again is an increase that was announced by the UK government, so we have no choice but to pay it. But yes, it is payable by employers and by employees. So what is in the report obviously is the impact that will have on us as an employer.
Thank you, Steve.
Appreciate that, Steve, for clarification. Can somebody then also clarify the non-pay inflation at 4%, which is on 5.210, please?
Chair, do you want me to come in on that one?
Yes, please do.
Okay. You've all seen that inflation is on an upward trend at the moment. In fact, the 12 months inflation rate to December 2021 was announced last week, and it is actually now running at around 5.4%. There is an anticipation that we will see that start to reverse in due course, but it was prudent to build 4% into our budget for all our non-pay related budgets to obviously reflect these increases that we've been experiencing in the inflation rate in recent months.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Cushing.
Yeah, right. The other one, I've got a number of questions. I do apologise for keeping people on. 5.2.11 are the school service pressures. Potential for further costs arising from formula changes linked to updated free school meals data. Now, I thought free school meals was a Welsh Government initiative, so they're really liable for the costs, or am I wrong?
Who can take that, please?
I can do that, Chair.
Thank you.
We obviously have a funding formula to distribute funding to our schools locally within Caerphilly. Now, part of that formula is obviously a measurement of deprivation, and one of the key indicators for that is free school meals. So the finance team are still looking at the latest data. So we have built an element into the budget, obviously for increased free school meals uptake, which, as I said, will impact on the distribution of the budget to the schools locally in Caerphilly.
Thank you, Steve.
Right. I'd like to go on then to 5.2.20, please. Table 4, summary of general fund inescapable services pressures and proposed new investments. You got the miscellaneous finance at 0.051. Can I have clarity on that, please?
I'm hoping Steve can answer that one.
Yeah, the main increase there is in levies. So it's for the payments that we make to the Coroner's Service and also to Glamorgan Archives and
You're breaking up a bit, Steve.
Yeah, you broke up a bit there, Steve.
Okay, sorry, I'll repeat that. These are essentially increases in payments we make through levies to organisations such as the Coroner's Service, Glamorgan Archives and the Gwent Archive Service. So it just reflects pressures in those areas. And as one of the partners, we obviously have to provide additional funding.
Thank you, Steve.
Right.
Donna, before we proceed, I need to go to other speakers now. I will come back to you, I promise.
Okay, no worries. I'll just keep my hand up then. Thanks.
Yep. Yes, thank you. Councillor Colin Mann, next, please.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I assumed I wasn't coming in until afterwards. But yeah, the budget has been described as being positive, and I suppose it should be when we've had an extra £25 million from Welsh Government, which they were extremely generous this time, of course. But could I ask the Cabinet member what sort of range of increases were considered from, well, nothing at all to maybe more than 2.5?
Councillor Stenner?
Yes, we did look. We looked at other lower percentage increases as well as higher percentage increases as well. We picked 2.5% because of the £10 million investment that we would have to invest in essential services. That's what we've gone out on consultation with. And as I said previously, we look forward to seeing the responses from the public and residents on the consultation to see whether or not it will actually be 2.5%. As I said, it is a draft budget.
Thank you, Leonard. Councillor Mann.
Thanks. The way these things are presented in the press, of course, things have already been decided. That's the impression people get, as was meant. I'm not saying they are. What I'm saying, the impression given by press reports is that that is the case. We also heard a comparison with council tax in Blaen and Gwent and Merthyr. I think we all know that they charge more, and for whatever reason, that's up to them. What's the comparison with Newport, please?
I haven't got those figures to hand for Newport. I don't know whether Steve will have them.
Steve?
Yep, sorry for the delay. I was just looking at the figures. Newport is about £12 higher than us on a band D. Caerphilly, as it was said earlier, has the second lowest rates, and Newport are the closest to us. They've got the third lowest rate within Wales at the present time.
That's a point I was making, folks, that not all our neighbouring authorities are 1 million miles away from us. And in fact, Newport was lower than us at one time. On Appendix 1, we've got a senior business partner role in corporate services to liaise with other directorate management teams, etc., etc., etc. This would appear to be something that I thought might have been done by directors and the chief executive actually liaising with each other. Do we actually need an additional body to be sort of passing messages between the different directorates?
Who'd like to take that, please?
I think Christina might be taking that.
I think Ed's showing. We'll ask Ed and then we'll call the chief executive in.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think with respect, Councillor Mann, this individual is going to be doing a little bit more than passing messages between different directorates. Just by way of a comparison, okay, we currently operate a model where we have lead finance officers working across the organisation, and those are finance officers that come under Steve Harris's professional leadership, but they're attached to directorate management teams. They're an absolutely fundamental conduit, really, between the needs and requirements of corporate finance and the needs and requirements of our directorates. Now, with the best will in the world, I'd like to have a lead HR person and a lead IT person and a lead customer services person, but I think Dave and Mark wouldn't thank me for sending 6 or 7 staff and attaching them to their directorates. So what we're trying to do here is bring somebody in that can act as that conduit, can help us to identify and put in place some service standards that corporate services can be held to account against, but more importantly, to understand the direction of travel that those directorates are on and make sure that corporate services are kind of being refined to support that journey in a way that we are currently finding it quite difficult to do. So if you imagine a lead finance officer, but with a kind of skill set, builds relationships, builds an understanding of what's going on in each of those directorates and can liaise between those directorate management teams, you'll get a feel for what we're looking to bring in. And it's a problem that I think both Dave and Mark would agree with me, something that we'd find very, very helpful under the current circumstances, whilst we're all busy doing many other things apart from sending messages back and forth between one another. Thanks.
Thank you, Ed. Before I call
So we
Christine,
can, we can see it, look forward to.
I'd just like to note that in the civil service where I work, it's common practice to have finance business partners and HR business partners working across directorates for the very purpose that Ed has set out. Christina, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And if I may, Chair, I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank all members for the very kind messages I've had during my period of absence. It's been greatly appreciated, so thank you very much. I don't intend to add to what Ed has already outlined in detail to you members, but I'm just mindful that a number of comments have been made this evening regarding the officer proposals contained within the budget. And I'd just like to give you a little context. Since 1920, there has been a reduction in the total staff headcount of 237 members of staff. And since then, you know, we have been delivering far more for less. But from my perspective, that is unsustainable. You know, we cannot be carrying on at this pace that we've embarked upon for a prolonged period of time. You know, I know a number of members have already raised their concerns with me regarding, as of the trade unions, regarding, you know, the impact on staff because of this, you know, continued pace in which we're operating at. But nevertheless, you know, members have been very clear to me, and certainly myself and the corporate management team are very much in this space. We want to take this organisation from good to excellence. And in order to do that, we have to put some resource into some of these places. And the proposals for staff have been presented here for your consideration this evening on that basis of, one, taking us from good to excellence, but very much listening to you as elected members, the messages that you have been given to myself, my corporate management team, and indeed the Cabinet over the last 12 months. So, Chair, I just wanted to offer that in terms of context. This is very much your budget to consider, and but I just wanted members to understand some of the rationale and background to some of the proposals contained within the report this evening. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Christina. Back to Councillor Mann, please.
Yeah, Chair. I assume we can look forward to an end to silo working now.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Is that okay? Thank you, Councillor Mann. Next, we have Caerphilly PF, who's a guest who's shown they wish to speak. Hello. Hello.
Can't find him, Chair.
It's Caerphilly people first, is it?
Yeah, I think
it's all right. Carry on.
Chair, I think it's Mr. Luke.
Is there a Mr. Luke who wants to speak, please? They're coming back in. Whilst they're coming back in, let's go to Councillor Mike Adams, please.
Thank you, Chair. May I comment that it's great to see so many members attending tonight and making their contributions. But we've had a couple referring to the consultation for the people of Caerphilly, and that's great. Unfortunately, of course, our consultation responses are far, far lower than we ever would like them to be. Councillor Etheridge mentioned a couple of his constituents have been in touch with him from the consultation. I hope that they've actually joined the consultation and given us their details directly as well. Councillor Stenner also referred earlier to the consultation from the people, and it's their ideas that really should be making the most difference to us in what they propose that we should do with not just the council tax, but hopefully they've read this report and seen all of the things that we both have to do, want to do, and need to do to take Caerphilly forward. And yes, 2.5% for some could be a bit of a problem, but as has already been said, we have 16,500 people, many of whom won't pay any council tax because of the reduction scheme that's in place. So many of our people also will be paying perhaps too many pennies a week for what we are offering them, but we need to be offering that. And I think as members, what we should really be doing in the time allowed to us is to encourage all of our constituents to join the consultation, but read all of the efforts that the council are trying to come to do to make sure they have a good council working for them, working for their families, and with the social security budget hopefully increasing nicely. It'll never be as much as Dave Street would like, I'm sure, but we need the money to do the jobs that they want us to do and need us to do. So I'll be encouraging all my residents in Portland to get involved with that consultation. Tell us what we can do for you. And I think that's what we need to be doing to encourage all of our consultations for many years to come, hopefully. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Over to Councillor John Ridgewell, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Forgive me, I've got such a bad signal here. I won't put my camera on. Can I start by saying how great it is to have Mrs. Harry back, and delighted that she's back here and back in the seat again. So it's good to see you, Christina. And I'd like to continue on that in that vein by adding my congratulations to Steve Harris and the team, you know, who always steer us through such troubled waters, and we're still in troubled waters now. But the point I wanted to make was that under his steerage, what we have been able to do is to find money from our reserves to top up the COVID recovery fund, which is so absolutely critical. And I make that point because there have been so many siren voices over the last few years saying, let's spend our reserves on this and let's spend our reserves on that. And it's only through prudent management that we're able to do these things now. And I can't overemphasize how critically important that is. So that's just my observation, really. But the question I wanted to ask was, it's in connection with £250,000, which is being invested now into our apprenticeship scheme. I'm delighted with that. I know Councillor Harvard mentioned that, and he and I share the views on that. I wonder if anybody could just give a brief explanation on the kind of areas that we're looking at with our apprenticeship scheme now.
Thank you, Councillor Ridgewell. Who'd like to take that, please? Ed, please.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Ridgewell. Nice to hear from you as well. I think it's probably easier to suggest what we're not going to be looking to bring apprentices into. I think we've had a very, very successful round of apprenticeship scheme previously, where the council took the £500,000 investment and turned that into over £1 million, where we then brought in quite a number of apprentices that have gone on to become full-time employees of ours. So this is well-trodden ground. I know it's something that Councillor Colin Gordon is a big fan of, as are we at CNT. Just for a bit more context, there's another £500,000 which was agreed this year that we are currently looking to use to bring in some additional apprentices. What this is an extra £250,000 that will be available every year. So this will move from being a kind of one-off investment to an ongoing investment, and I think we all very much welcome that. As it's currently being designed, we are going out to the community to ask whether apprentices would like to come in and work for the authority in X number of areas. Now, those are areas that you wouldn't typically expect to find apprenticeships in. So some of those will be administrative roles. We're out at the moment for a number of IT roles, and we're getting a huge response from the community in those. Phones ringing off the hook really to come and work in that environment. As it stands at the moment, we've got a list of potential areas which I'm happy to circulate to members following the meeting if that would be helpful. That really does cover the length and breadth of the organisation. So, you know, we have opportunities in care, we have opportunities in IT, customer services, communications, right across the whole of the organisation. And I think if the proposal to bring the 250k in on a recurrent basis is agreed by council, it'll be massive for us organisationally, because, you know, as you've already alluded to this evening, after many years of difficulties in terms of our financial settlements, to actually open the door and allow some individuals to come in and get an experience of working for a great organisation like ours, all power to us. So if you're happy, Chair, I'll circulate that outside the meeting, but it really is the length and breadth of the organisation. Thanks.
Yes, please, Ed. I think we'd all like to see that list, and I absolutely agree. This is a great initiative. It's giving young people the opportunity to develop a career with Caerphilly Council, which is what we'd like to see. So it's boosting local employment opportunities, and it's benefiting our council as well. So it's a win-win. Thank you very much for that, Ed. Councillor Ridgewell, did you want to come back?
No, just to say thank you, Chair, and thanks very much, Ed.
Thank you. No one else is showing, so I'm going to go back to Councillor Cushing now, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm trying to get my camera on. I do apologise. Can I add my sentiments? It's lovely to welcome Christina back. It's really lovely to see you back at the helm. I'm sure Dave is much appreciated of it. So lovely to see you again, Christina. Can I just ask Leonard a quick question regarding the consultation? Is it being posted on Facebook or anything? Because I'd like to share it if it has, but I'm not, because I do visit the Caerphilly Facebook page quite often, but I haven't noticed that post on there, because I think it would make it a lot easier to access, especially to my constituents around here.
I'm sure I've seen it on Facebook and Twitter, but I'll go back to Councillor Stenner for that, please.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a link that's been put out on social media that you click on the link and it'll take you to the consultations. I would I would urge the public to use the actual link, not just to comment on the thread, because that isn't really helpful to us as an authority. We need the consultation completed. So yes.
Lovely. I'll have a look then and put it up on social media myself. Right, going back to the report, can I take you now to 5.5.2? It's regarding the COVID funding, basically, and 5.5.3. Can I ask, what was the initial funding that was earmarked? Because I know we've got 2.516 million left in the reserve, but what was the initial amount that was given to us by Welsh Government and was earmarked for COVID reasons, please?
Thank you, Councillor Cushing. Steve, hopefully you're able to take that.
Yeah, these are actually two separate things. The funding that was received from Welsh Government through the Hardship Fund was to cover additional costs as a consequence of the pandemic and income losses. And just to give you an idea of the scale of that, for the 2021 financial year, just for Caerphilly, that was around £30 million. So we did get significant funding. The earmark reserve is something that Council agreed to establish to meet any additional costs that may not have been funded through the Hardship Fund with Welsh Government. That was initially established at £3.5 million. There's £2.5 million available in that reserve currently. And as you can see from the report, I'm recommending that we top that up to 5 to deal with any other unfunded elements that we may still have to meet in the short term as a consequence of the pandemic.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Cushing. Councillor Cushing? Your image is frozen. That you may have an issue with the link. Can I go to the leader whilst we wait for Councillor Cushing to rejoin us? Leader, please.
Hello.
Okay, come in.
Leader first, and yes. I'll come back to you, Councillor Cushing, but leader now.
Okay, yeah, I think I got thrown out somehow.
No, Councillor Cushing finish what she needs to say, and then I'll come in after. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Back to Councillor Cushing. Sorry.
Sorry, I missed everything that Steve said because I do apologise. It just sort of chucked me out of the system. So I missed everything that Steve said regarding the COVID fund. Is there any way you can clarify it for me again, please? And hopefully I won't get chucked out again.
Okay, I'm sorry, Steve, but I have to ask you to repeat yourself.
That's okay. Yeah, just briefly, we're talking about two different things here. The hardship fund was the funding that we received from Welsh Government to fund the additional costs arising from the pandemic and income losses. The earmark reserve was actually established by council. So that's additional money that we set aside to meet any costs that wouldn't be reimbursed by the Welsh Government. So they are actually two separate things.
Thank you, Steve. Is that okay, Councillor Cushing?
Can I just ask clarity? How much was the original reserve for that was set aside by us as a council?
We established a reserve originally of around 2.5 million. In the outturn report in July, we topped that up to 3.5 million. There's about 2.4 million left on the reserve currently, and we're now recommending, particularly in the light of the fact that the hardship fund has been withdrawn, that we top it up to £5 million.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, that clarifies that then. Thanks. I don't know if the leader wants to come back in because I might have another one or two questions. I'm just scrolling through now. No, actually, I don't.
Well, you've done everyone.
I've done them all.
That's a result. Thank you.
I am down now.
Thank you, Councillor Cushing. We're going to Councillor Mann.
In the background.
We're going to Councillor Mann and then Councillor Marsden. Councillor Mann first, please.
Thank you, Chair. Could it be clarified for us exactly how many people don't pay council tax at all? A figure was given earlier, but I just wanted clarification, please.
I think Councillor Stenner gave us that figure. Did you? Yes.
I haven't got the figure to hand. It was just over 20%, but I believe, Steve will probably have the actual figure.
Thank you. Steve, please.
Yeah, if I could just clarify those figures. We have 16,300 households that have support through the council tax reduction scheme. That's around 20.34%. In terms of those that don't pay any council tax, it's 9,034 households, which is 11.27% of all households in the county borough.
That's great. Thank you. Councillor Mann.
Yeah, that's what I want to clarify, Chair, because obviously everyone who on the CTRS don't get the whole thing free. So it's a proportion of them, isn't it?
Yep.
So you said just over 9,000, Steve, I think, yeah?
Yep, that's correct.
Let me listen.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chair.
Leader, please.
Thanks ever so much, Chair. And I just wanted to, just to comment on a few of the points made tonight. And I think it's important, isn't it? And I think Councillor Mann absolutely knows the system here in terms of how we set the budget. It is a process, obviously, where we set the draft budget, we go to consultation, we go to scrutiny, and we gather all those views. And I think it's important to say, bearing in mind the comment that was made that in the press, you're assuming that it's already a done deal. Absolutely. This is a draft proposal. And this is something that we always do, and it's something that we do take on board. So I think it's important that I make that point. Again, around the investments we're making here, it's key, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, this is a no-cut budget, the second in 2 years. And I think that's really important that, we steer this ship in a steady and cautious way to ensure it's our financial resilience going forward in light of the medium-term financial plan ahead of us. We know year 2 and year 3 could be choppy. So I think it's important that we set the appropriate levels here all the way through our spending and invest in those services that we know will grow and develop our council to be the best that we possibly can be, alongside all of those corporate reviews. So for me, this is absolutely pulling all those strands together that makes a difference for our residents in Caerphilly. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Leader.
Well said, Leader.
Councillor Ridgewell, your hand is still up. Did you want to come back in?
Sorry, Jez, legacy hand, apologies.
Okay, thank you. There aren't any other hands showing. Anyone else like to speak before we wind up, please? No. Okay. As Councillor Stenner said in her introduction to this item, we've been asked to consider and comment on the content of the report prior to final budget proposals being presented to Cabinet and the Council next month. Well, we have considered and we have commented, and I'm very grateful to all those who've spoken this evening. Thank you very much. And now hopefully we can adjourn. Thank you very much, everyone. Let's just make sure we get the recording switched off first, please.